He was the guy next door, the one who organized barbecues, wore a wide smile, and waved at his neighbors every morning. He volunteered for the local Democratic Party. He visited children's hospitals dressed as a clown. Pogo the Clown, they called him. He made people laugh. He made them feel safe. He was the last person anyone would ever suspect. But in December of 1978, a teenage boy went missing, and a smell, a foul, decaying stench, began to seep from beneath the floorboards of Gacy's tidy suburban home. Police dug into the crawl space, and what they uncovered wasn't just one body. It was a graveyard, silent, layered, hidden in plain sight. 29 boys and young men, stuffed, stacked, buried beneath the foundation of trust he had built. John Wayne Gacy wasn't just a killer. He was a performance, a mask, a nightmare that wore a painted smile. This is the story of how one man fooled an entire neighborhood and became one of the most terrifying serial killers in American history. John Wayne Gacy didn't look like a monster. He didn't act like one either. In fact, if you asked his neighbors in the 1970s who they trusted most on their block, many would have pointed to him. He was the life of the party, literally. He organized neighborhood picnics, dressed up as Santa at Christmas, and played the clown, Pogo the Clown, at birthday parties and charity events. To the public, he was warm, generous, and always willing to lend a hand. But it was all a carefully crafted mask. Born on March 17, 1942, Gacy grew up in a working-class Polish-Irish family in Chicago. His father was a World War I veteran and a hard-drinking, hot-tempered man who beat him regularly and called him weak. No matter how hard Gacy tried, he could never earn his father's approval. That deep craving for validation, especially from dominant men, never left him. As a young adult, Gacy tried to prove himself. He married a woman named Marlyn Myers, whose father owned several KFC franchises in Iowa. Gacy took over management, wore suits, hosted lavish dinner parties, and quickly became known as a rising community figure. He joined the JCs, a civic group for young leaders, and rose in its ranks. But there was something off behind the scenes. Whispers began to circulate about Gacy's interest in young boys. In 1968, everything changed. He was arrested and convicted for sexually assaulting a 15-year-old boy. He pled guilty, claiming it was a misunderstanding. The court didn't buy it. Gacy was sentenced to 10 years in prison. His wife filed for divorce and left with their children. And yet, just 18 months later, Gacy was released early for good behavior. When he got out, he returned to Chicago and started over. He moved in with his mother and later bought the now infamous house at 8213 West Somerdale Avenue. He launched a construction business, PDM Contractors, and began hiring teenage boys from the area. Outwardly, things looked perfect. He became politically involved, even got photographed with First Lady Rosalynn Carter. His home became a hub for social gatherings and backyard parties. No one questioned him when young boys came and went from the property. After all, he was just the nice contractor from down the street. And then came the clown. Pogo wasn't just a gimmick. It was a persona, one Gacy carefully created. He said clowns could get away with anything because people didn't take them seriously. The makeup gave him power. The costume gave him confidence. But most importantly, it gave him cover. No one looked twice at a clown. No one suspected the truth, that in his crawl space just beneath their feet, the bodies were already piling up. The transformation from predator to killer didn't happen overnight. After his release from prison, John Wayne Gacy was careful. He knew how to present himself, how to smile, shake hands, play the part of the respectable businessman. But underneath, he had begun to unravel. And the urges he once tried to suppress now became his obsession. It started slowly. A promise of work, an offer of quick money, a friendly face inviting a boy inside. Just for a moment. The front door closed, and no one ever saw them again. Gacy used charm as a weapon. He knew how to make young men feel safe, like they were in control. Some were runaways, some were from broken homes, some were just looking for a job. He invited them into his home under the pretense of offering construction work with PDM Contractors. He'd show them magic tricks, One of his favorites he called the handcuff trick. He'd say, "Let me show you how the cops do it. You put your hands behind your back like this." Then the cuffs clicked, and suddenly everything changed. By the time they realized it wasn't a game, it was too late. Gacy would smile and whisper, "The trick is, you have to have the key." He raped, he tortured, he killed. Most of his victims were strangled with a makeshift tourniquet, a board or stick twisted tight with a rope. Others were suffocated. He took his time, sometimes keeping bodies in the house for days before burying them. And where did the bodies go? Not far. Beneath his home was a narrow, suffocating crawl space, just 3 feet tall. That's where he buried them, one by one, row by row. Some nights he'd dig and rearrange corpses to make room for more. He kept records, memorizing the layout, making sure he could fit them all. When he ran out of space, he started dumping bodies into the Des Plaines River. Neighbors complained about the smell, but Gacy always had excuses. A dead animal under the house, he'd say, or just sewer problems. No one suspected a thing. Not yet. The horror was building just beneath their feet, and it would take one teenage boy's disappearance to finally crack the illusion. It started on a cold December evening in 1978, with a missing boy and a mother's instinct that something was terribly wrong. 15-year-old Robert Piest had just finished his shift at a local pharmacy in Des Plaines, Illinois. Before heading home, he told his mom he was going to meet a man about a construction job, said it would only take a few minutes. He never came back. At first, police treated it like a typical runaway case. But Robert wasn't like that. He was responsible, well-liked, planning for college. His mother insisted something was off. When police retraced Robert's steps, the last name to come up was a contractor, John Wayne Gacy, a local businessman, friendly, respected. He'd done work for the city. He dressed as a clown at parties. To most, he was harmless, maybe even likable. But when detectives visited Gacy's home, their instincts said otherwise. He denied meeting Robert, said he had no idea what they were talking about. But one detective spotted a subtle twitch in his smile. Too quick, too confident. Then came the criminal records. Digging into Gacy's past revealed something alarming. A prior conviction for sexually assaulting a teenage boy in Iowa. He had served time, then quietly returned to Chicago and rebuilt his life. The picture began to change, from friendly contractor to predator. Investigators got a judge to approve surveillance. They put a team on Gacy 24/7, and Gacy knew. He approached them on the street, told them they were wasting their time. He even invited them inside for coffee, played the role of the amused host, calm, cocky, calculated, but his facade was starting to slip. He drove aimlessly for hours. He drank. A lot. He made dark jokes. Once during a stakeout, he told an officer, "Clowns can get away with murder." Inside his house, something else was off. The officers noticed a smell, thick and unnatural. It clung to the air, like wet decay trapped beneath the floor. Gacy blamed a broken sewer line, said it was nothing. But they weren't convinced. Then a breakthrough. Officers searching his trash found a pharmacy receipt with Robert Piest's name on it. It placed the boy in Gacy's presence the night he disappeared. Now they had evidence. Now they had cause. On December 21st, police returned to the house, this time with a warrant. They tore up the floorboards. The crawl space was damp, dark, and freshly dug. Within minutes, a detective called out, "Found something." It was a bone. Then more. Then the full picture emerged. Not one body, but dozens. For the officers standing there, it wasn't just the smell or the silence. It was the realization that they had stepped into the burial ground of a man who had hunted in plain sight for years. What began as a missing persons case was now a national horror story, and the beginning of Gacy's unraveling. As officers began tearing up the floor in John Wayne Gacy's crawl space, they didn't expect what they would find within minutes. A single bone, small, human. It was enough to stop the room cold. They kept digging. Then came another, and another. The bones weren't just scattered. They were stacked, layered, organized, as if someone had made room for the next. The deeper they went, the clearer it became. This wasn't a one-time crime. This was a system. Some of the bodies were wrapped in plastic. Others were left to decay in the damp, cold soil. Several had rope burns. Many were still wearing parts of their clothing. Forensic teams arrived, and the house transformed. From suburban home to excavation site, each time they uncovered a new body, a detective called out a number. 1, 2, 5, 10. By the time they reached 20, even the most seasoned officers had gone silent. Some detectives wept. Others walked outside, unable to breathe. One man vomited in the bushes. The smell was unbearable. It was no longer just rot. It was grief made physical. Years of secrets rising from the ground all at once. Then came the attic. Then the garage. Even the backyard. Anywhere Gacy could fit a body, he did. But he hadn't buried them all. Some victims, police would learn later, were dumped into the nearby Des Plaines River when Gacy ran out of room beneath his home. In total, the remains of 29 boys and young men were recovered from the crawlspace, 4 more from the river. Some would never be identified. As the media swarmed the scene, America watched in horror. A man who painted himself as a clown, a friend, a trusted neighbor, had turned his home into a slaughterhouse. And now every shovel of dirt told the story he tried to bury. The trial of John Wayne Gacy began on February 6, 1980. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, victims' families, curious spectators, all waiting to hear how a man who dressed as a clown could murder 33 young men and boys. Gacy arrived wearing a suit, calm and composed. He pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. His defense team claimed he suffered from multiple personality disorder. They said Pogo the Clown and Jack were alter egos, personalities who committed the murders without Gacy's conscious control. But the evidence was overwhelming. So were the testimonies. Witnesses described in horrifying detail the way Gacy lured them in, attacked them, and how some had narrowly escaped. The prosecution painted Gacy as fully aware of his actions, meticulous, calculating, and entirely sane. The jury took just 2 hours to reach a verdict. Guilty. Gacy was convicted of 33 counts of murder, the most ever by one person in U.S. history at the time. He was sentenced to death, but he wouldn't be executed immediately. For 14 years, Gacy sat on death row at Menard Correctional Center in Illinois. He spent his time painting, mostly portraits of himself as a clown, skulls, and cartoon characters. Disturbingly, his paintings became collector items, sold for thousands of dollars in what some called murderabilia. He gave interviews, showing no remorse. When asked if he felt guilt, Gacy coldly replied, "I should never have been convicted of anything more serious than running a cemetery without a license." On May 10, 1994, John Wayne Gacy was executed by lethal injection. His final words? "Kiss my ass." Even in death, he remained defiant. But the impact of his crimes lingered far beyond the prison walls. Gacy's case changed how authorities handled missing persons, especially teens labeled as runaways. His story became a dark mirror reflecting society's blind spots, how charm can disguise evil, how a trusted face can hide a monster. The crawl space under 8213 West Somerdale Avenue was filled in. The house was demolished, but the horror couldn't be buried. To this day, some of Gacy's victims remain unidentified, and families still wait, hoping that DNA technology might one day bring them closure. John Wayne Gacy didn't just kill bodies. He destroyed lives, shattered families, and left a legacy carved in fear. His story isn't just a tale of evil. It's a chilling reminder of how evil can wear a smile. John Wayne Gacy's story is more than a horrifying chapter in true crime history. It's a warning that monsters don't always hide in the dark. Sometimes they host neighborhood barbecues. Sometimes they shake your hand and smile. And if his victims have taught us anything, it's that every name matters. Every face deserves to be remembered. If this story shook you, don't forget to subscribe for more deep dive true crime stories. Like, comment, and share to keep their voices alive. And let us know in the comments, which case should we uncover next? Because the truth is always darker than fiction.